Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley. This is another video in the Cumbrian churches series. The last video, God willing, is going to have been the one on Kirkland, St. Lawrence's Kirkland. This is the church of St. John the Evangelist, Skirwith. Skirwith is probably the main centre of population in the old Kirkland parish. And in 1859, William Parker of Skirwith Abbey, which is the big house, it was a medieval monastery, dissolution happens and the abbey is closed down and the buildings are sold off. And eventually they go through the Salkeld family and eventually they end up with the Parkers. And William Parker is an Anglo-Catholic. And that explains the appearance of this building, 1859. It's only 3 years between the building of the little church of St. John at Merton, St. John the Baptist at Merton, and the building of this. But there's totally different churchmanship. This is Anglo-Catholic, we are Catholic, we are not Protestant, whereas Merton is, we are very, very Protestant. And so as we look around this building, I'll point out, among other things, some of the points that show just this great difference, the difference between pre-Oxford movement and post-Oxford movement Anglican churches. Another thing to point out here is the building of this church here in Skirwith. Up until the 1850s, if you lived in Skirwith, you trekked, it's about 1.5 miles, you trekked up that road to Kirkland, uphill, and then it's downhill on the way back. Now, today I came in a car. I got bogged down, got stuck in the mud outside Kirkland Church, and a very kind local gentleman, I went around, I noticed a house with smoke coming out the chimney, I knocked on the door, and a very kind gentleman there towed my car out. So they're good friendly people around here. They're willing to help outsiders, visitors in distress, and I'm very, very grateful for him. And I wanted to put this on the video to say thank you very much. You probably won't watch this, but thank you very much, gentleman who towed me out of the mud at Kirkland. But that mud, I've got mud all over my shoes, of course, because of that. But that mud, and trekking up and trekking down, and you've got your weddings, you've got your funerals. And so it is that Mr. Parker at Skirwith says, I'm going to build a church on a piece of land in the middle of the village, and we're going to have our own little church here at Skirwith. So we'll have a look around and we'll see what that little church is like. So here we are, we start as usual at the west end here at Skirwith, and the first thing I want to look at is the organ. This is a positive organ. Now, the Positive Organ Company specialise in making little organs for little churches. You can find there's at least one demonstration I know of one on YouTube. Single manual, this one's had a pedal board added, I expect. Very nice. It's a sort of squeaky sound to some extent, but it's your authentic Victorian small church organ here. This is the font, and of course it's a nice 14th century style stem, nice cover, and then there's a counterweight. There's the counterweight, which means that it goes up and down on the chain, and you don't need to exert a huge amount of force to lift it. Beyond is a chandelier, which has been converted to electricity. Seating here, standard Victorian pews. We've got some devotional pictures, devotional print. That looks like the flight to Egypt. Windows are angels with texts very largely. Here we've got the 4 Evangelists. There's St. John at the bottom. But stained glass. It's important to have stained glass, even if it is this bog standard stuff, because it emphasises at this point that we want a more medieval feel. It's not like Merton, where you've got pointy windows but a Protestant interior. One thing that is very similar to Merton is that there's a very prominent pulpit. The Anglo-Catholics could be very, very decided preachers, and here in Cumbria there was very much this emphasis on preaching. And so you've got this high pulpit, stone base with these carved heads around the outside, carved itself with the emblems of the Passion. We'll see them as we go back. Priest's stall, see, no three-decker, you've got a priest's stall. It's a priest's stall because, again, they're Anglo-Catholics. Image of Christ as the Good Shepherd. It's Anglo-Catholicism trying to be suited, really, to the area. We've got a big rood. There's no rood screen here, no screen, but we've got a rood, a big cross hanging from the ceiling here. The interior is very much as it would have been originally, which is always nice. Double-sided lectern. And the idea here was that you could rotate the top, and you'd have the readings, the two main readings, the Old Testament, New Testament lessons, open and ready to go. I think they've been doing some maintenance there of the chair. Altar, it's an altar with a reredos. And you can see we go up and we've got this very separate area, this clerical area. This church, dedicated in honour of the Holy Evangelist John, was founded and endowed by William Parker, late of Skirwith Abbey in the county of Cumberland, Esquire, and completed by the Reverend Christopher Parker, M.A., same name, probably his son, actually. The present patron, yes, it's his son, in the year of our Lord, 1859, also caused the east window to be filled with stained glass in grateful memory of his relative, so not his father, and be his uncle, I expect, who died January the 22nd, 1856. Laus Deus, to the praise of God. And so we've got the east window, and it's Christ blessing little children, Christ receiving little children. Emblems of the Passion on the reredos. We have here Christ subject to his Father. Who did that? You look where that glazing bar goes, straight across the face of the youthful Christ. Could they not have put the glazing bar somewhere else? Never mind. Baptism of Christ by John. There's the chair for the bishop when he comes, the episcopal chair. We've got a couple of stalls here rather than sedilia. Reverend Christopher Parker's memorial here. And here we have the Nativity and the presentation of the temple. And again, this quasi-cod medieval style where what you do is you have the baby looks like a sort of miniature adult rather than an actual baby. Apostles on the front of the altar. Fairly typical. Nice bit of tiles on the floor. And we look west and we've got, but there is this very definite, as of course at Kirkland, at the medieval church, a very definite break between nave and chancel. And here we've got the Adoration of the Magi and Christ, age 12, in the temple. He would not be sitting in a seat like that, but never mind. Medieval tradition, or something like that. This is the Sanctus Bell. A very Anglo-Catholic thing. It would be rung at the elevation of the communion wafer, which they would refer to as the host, all of which was not actually legal in the Church of England, but, you know, if you've got enough money, you can ignore that. I shouldn't say that, but I will. Pulpit again. And for all that and all that, it's a very prominent pulpit. And I say the important thing here is that Edwin Wilson Parker, and again another Parker, got a big crucifix behind the pulpit. It's a very typical Anglo-Catholic thing. Interesting, the sword there is a sabre rather than a, sword. But again, instruments of the Passion, you see, you've got the crown of thorns there. There's a Lady Chapel, because of course the Lady Chapel, this is an Anglo-Catholic church. They're big on Lady Chapels. And I'm trying to work out how this door works. I don't think it does work. It should work. There we are. There we are. So this is the Lady Chapel. Lady Chapels are important in Anglo-Catholic thought because we need to have them. I know, I'm being a bit sarcastic about Anglo-Catholicism, I shouldn't be. There we are, Shrine of Our Lady, because of course, screened off, and this would be used for smaller services and as a place for private prayer. We've got here the Adoration of the Shepherds. That's there we go. There's an Cumbria tab there and a sanctuary lamp. The altar is what was known as the English altar style. It's not actually English, it's just medieval European. It's just that everywhere else stopped using them. And this was dedicated in 1917 in memory of Thomas Cooper Parker, Lieutenant in the Westmoreland and Cumbrian Yeomanry, who was killed in action at the at Ypres on October the 12th, 1917, age 27. So this is a war memorial chapel in some sense. So, I can't say I like the idea of lady chapels myself, but there we are. And you can see this is what's called the English altar, and you've got your curtains outside. And the idea was you can't stand on the north side, you can't stand on the south side, you have to stand, the priest has to stand in front with his back to the people, which is, of course, the Roman Catholic way. We have an stone altar slab here with consecration crosses. So very, very high church, very, very Anglo-Catholic. You've got your angels bearing candles up there. Now, what a difference there is between this and Merton. And of course, what's happened is you've had people like John Henry Newman trying to call the Church of England to a more, well, back basically to a medieval way of thinking and a medieval way of worshipping. So that's the church here at Skirwith. I'll just try and open this door. Oh, sorry, it doesn't help when you've got one arm that doesn't work properly. So there we are, that's the Lady Chapel, and the screens. Originally it would just be an aisle with extra seating in, but it's been turned into a Lady Chapel. So there we are, that's Skirwith St John's, and that's that positive organ at the back with its, the case, of course, is actually freestanding. The organ's just been slotted inside there. The case is not actually an organ case at all, it's a box to put the organ in. And there is a difference between those two things. So there we are. Let's then go outside and have a look around, and if I can avoid dropping the remote control. And so here we are outside at Skirwith. In 1954, the church here was, well, the right of presentation of the church, rather, was given to the Community of the Resurrection at Mirfield, which is an Anglo-Catholic monastic order. So that tells you that the Anglo-Catholic tradition here is alive and well. Well, alive anyway. You can see little tower, 14th century style, which was the preferred style of Gothic, what's known as decorated. I've commented before why they did that. It's this idea that decorated was the full flowering of English Gothic, which is nonsense. But no, I make these videos, I can express my opinions in them. So we'll have a look around the outside, and you know, for all my comments about decorated not being the full flowering, it's quite a pretty little building. And so here we are, Skirwith on the outside. You see the little spire, that's a very 14th century thing. There are churches like that in England, and it's a really good idea here. You want a spire, but you don't want it too tall. You can see the reinforcing bars, the iron tie beams on the outside of the tower. Yeah, that you don't want something that exerts too much pressure on it. So you get this nice little spire. That's actually, there's one locally at I think it's Eden Hall, an actual medieval example. So there's the old rectory, the old rectory, and the clergy house, now a private house, as so many are. That's the, you can see in front, fenced in, that is the burial plot for the Parkers, the founder. They say that they lived at Skirwith Abbey, a big house, which wasn't rebuilt in a Gothic style by them, so it still is very much a Georgian big house, I believe. And you've got your little aisle here. The tower offset is quite a common thing, and part of the idea was that if you couldn't actually afford the tower, you could have it built later. So these designs would be submitted with tower at one side to be convenient. And there we have the other Parkers and their private plot here in the graveyard of the church, of course, that they built, and there was no church here before. It's a new build. That's why it's interesting here. Just go up here and look at the clergy house beyond. Look at Merton, new build, 1856, Protestant Reformed church, and then here Skirwith, new build, 1859, and Anglo-Catholic pointiness, trying to look like a medieval church, which I must confess it does just quite well. And here we are, as a south side, but the door, interesting, the priest door's on this side, because of course this is the side that the priest's house is, so it makes sense for him not to have to get all the way around the house. And it would be priest's house because they're Anglo-Catholics, so it's this idea of the ministry as a sacrificing sacramental priesthood, and that, so there's this emphasis on the importance of the episcopally ordained ministry. Now, part of this idea is back to the Middle Ages, back to the ages of faith. Now, it doesn't work. Today, Anglo-Catholics are very largely quite liberal in their theology. There are some who are not, and they're slowly going over to Rome. But it's a dream of the Middle Ages, like Tennyson's Arthurian poetry. It's like William Burgess, the mad architect, who actually dressed up as a medieval architect. It's a romanticism. So there we are, that's the church here at Skirwith. And so St John's Skirwith, here in the midst of a little village. It's interesting to think that the village is older, much older than the church, and it grew up here, no doubt, around the back, simply because it was the better place. It was a bit sheltered, there was a valley here. And before there was this, there was a Methodist chapel. That's the other thing. These new build churches are very much the Church of England going, we're supposed to be the national church. There's all these Methodists around, and these Baptist, and most around here is Methodist. All these Methodists around. We need to have churches where the people are. And that's what they did. And today, in many cases, most cases sadly, the Methodist churches are closed, Methodist chapels are closed, and some of these Anglican churches are just hanging on. And one of the reasons they're just hanging on is, what have they got to proclaim? What are they teaching? What are they preaching? Do we have a gospel? Do we have a message? And it's a question that not just the Anglicans but the free churches need to ask. Do we have a message? What is that message? That message is Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Well, thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.